Samaritan story. We're continuing to contemplate what this teaches us about the kingdom and how to have kingdom thinking and kingdom view as we are thinking through things, as we are looking through things. Not only things that are happening to us in our immediacy of our sphere, but also within just the world in general. So let me read the parable once more. A lawyer got up and put Jesus on the spot. "Teacher," he said, "what should I do to inherit the life of the coming age?" Now notice, if we haven't mentioned, I feel like I have, but if I haven't mentioned it before, this is a very good translation of that phrase, the life of the coming age. In probably our original translations, this has gotten changed into how do I inherit eternal life, which has gotten interpreted, how do I get to heaven when I die? That is not what this is talking about. This lawyer is saying, what must I do to experience the life of the coming age, which is the age when God will come and reign? What must I do to experience that now? What must I do to have a part of that now? This is what we pray for every Sunday. Your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. Not in heaven as it is in heaven, but now, on earth. How do we experience? How do we live out? How do we think in ways that are consistent with the kingdom of God that Jesus said was inaugurated, was begun when he came, and that is in us? And the problem is sometimes we need to get out of the way so what's in us, or the right thing that's in us, is being lived out. Back to this. Well, Jesus says, what's written in the law? You should know this. You're a lawyer. What does it say? Well, love your Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and all your understanding. And love your neighbor as yourself. Well said. Do that, and you'll live. Notice he says, you will live. Do that. You'll experience the life you're supposed to have. Seems pretty simple.
Expand a little bit on the term lawyer.
Lawyer is someone who knows the law. Who is,
which is
for them, it is the religious law. And all the laws that have been added on to all of that. Okay? So this is an expert. This would have been, when we were studying John, I don't know how many remember, but the term was, and the Jews did this. The word there for Jews was the Judaioi. Not all of the people who are ethnically Jews, but the people who are in the ruling class, the people who were in charge, so to speak. All right? So this gives us a kind of the same kind of feeling. This is someone who knew the law, who people looked to know the law, who would, even this conversation with Jesus here, it seems he's trying to get an advantage so that he can speak. And he's trying to get a little advantage over Jesus. He says, well, and it says, wanting to win the point. Who is my neighbor? Guys, I cannot tell you, if you want to know a question that plagues the world, it is that question. Not only is it the question itself, but it is the reason behind the question. Why would this be the question? Now it says, trying to win the point. Who's my neighbor? But the problem is that's not how they had been raised to think, or at least that's not how they had interpreted things. There's another passage where Jesus is dealing with the Pharisees, who are experts in the law. And they say, well, we're putting our tithes into the church. And Jesus looks at them and says, you are using this law so that you don't have to take care of your parents. dare you? So, very easy for even highly educated within the Bible people to choose to see things in a certain way that isn't any way that Jesus would teach us to see things. So Jesus rose to the challenge and tells a story. I love that. We talked about it last week, that we are a story-driven, we are a narrative-driven creation, people. Stories have a way of enlightening us to things that other things don't. I can't tell you how often I mourn that there are no more shows like Andy Griffith.
I'm ready to go back to Mayberry.
Me too,
Charlene,
Charlene.
but it's not the main channel.
Well, but why don't they have shows like that? Why aren't they creating new shows
They're
like
not
that?
making them.
It was why are they making shows like that? It was such a good show, and I don't know if you guys knew this. Originally, the character of Opie was actually written to be kind of a smart aleck with his dad. Originally, he was not a kid who respected his dad, who listened to his dad. And Ron Howard's father, who was on set, because obviously his kids were on set, he went to Andy Griffith and said, I know you've written the character this way, but what do you think if we just did something different? What if Opie actually respected you? What if he actually had the kind of relationship that you would hope? And Andy listened, and that's why Opie is that way in the show. But my favorite episodes are those episodes between Andy and Opie, and when they have those conversations. My favorite, if you guys are not familiar with it, is called the Underprivileged Children's Fund. And Opie, this woman was going and she was collecting for the Underprivileged Children's Fund, and she comes by the jail and she's talking with Andy, and she says, yeah, I went by and oh my goodness, those kids really wanted to help the underprivileged children. And he said, I bet Opie gave some money too. She said, well, actually, Opie gave the least amount of anybody. He said, how much? 3 cents. So of course Andy is his pride is hurt that his son is not up to the task that he thinks he should be. So when Opie comes to the jail from school, he sits him down and says, we're going to have to talk. He said, son, I can't believe you gave 3 pennies to the Underprivileged Children's Fund. Gosh, Pa, did I give too much? Too much? No, not too much. He said, but Pa, I gotta save my money to buy my girlfriend a present, Charlotte. Well, if a boy can get his head turned by a pretty girl at this age, God help you when you get older. He said, don't you know that there's like 400 underprivileged boys, or 1.5 per mile? And Opie said, gosh, Paul, I've never seen one of those. One of what? Half a boy. No, son, don't. That's just the ratio. Poor Horatio. Son, just forget about that. Gosh, Mom, it's hard to forget about half a boy. Anyway, love that episode. But why? Why can't we have those kinds of things? But so he tells a story, and Andy likes to tell a story. Yes, go ahead.
I'll probably get thrown out of class. But have you ever noticed that Otis, the town drunk, was the only one in town that was married?
It's true.
Interesting.
And then
At least main players. I would say at least main players, because you had this couple that was always arguing, and Andy went over to make them get along, and then once he got them to get along, then they hated everybody else.
I've never figured that out.
That is interesting.
But toward the end, Otis got off the
Yeah.
wagon. I mean, got on the wagon.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that was cool.
So, and that's my fault. So
I couldn't
the man was going
resist.
from Jerusalem to Jericho, and was set upon by brigands. They stripped him, beat him, ran off, leaving him half dead. That half dead is kind of an important piece of this story. A priest happened to be going down the road, and he saw the man when he went past on the opposite side. Now, most likely, the reasoning is that to touch a dead body was to make yourselves ritually unclean. And it would take a lengthy time period to get yourself clean to where you could serve in the temple again. So there is a possibility that we have a law that is being seen as the more important law than the law to love your neighbor as yourself. So Jesus is giving an example of where we can pick and choose how we want to follow things that may not necessarily be actually living into the law that Jesus says is the most important. When in doubt, the law of love is the one that takes the higher precedent. So he walks alongside to the other side. The Levite, who was a worker in the temple, he comes along too. He also goes past. Then a Samaritan. We talked last week about put the one person in that spot that you think is the one person that you would never want to be near, that you would never want to have anything to do with. That's the person whose label needs to be put in that spot, because that, in that context, for that time period, that's what the Samaritans were. They were the unclean that you would walk 3 extra days to go around to not have to be in contact with them at all.
And possibly the guy on the side of the road, half dead, as you can see, you're Samaritan, I'd rather die than you touch me.
Well,
That'd be almost.
possibly.
Almost.
But when the Samaritan, who has been treated horribly by that group of people, by the Jews, so I had every reason to see, oh, that's a Jewish guy. Walk on. But no. It says he was filled with pity, compassion. He came to him, bound his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, which was basically medicine at that time period. The next morning, as he was going on his way, he took him on his own beast, took him to an inn, and they looked after him. The next morning, he was going on his own way, and he gave the innkeeper 2 days of earnings, 2 dinars, and said, take care of him on my way back. If there's anything extra, I will pay it. And Jesus said, which of these do you think was a neighbor? Notice the lawyer does not use the name Samaritan in his answer. He doesn't even want to speak that. The one who showed him mercy. Good. Now you go do the same. So guys, I want to take us in a little bit of a different direction today with the story. I want to be a little creative here. And we kind of have the underlying thing that's going on here. We have the underlying basis for what Jesus is trying to tell us in this. But what if we push this a little bit? What if the Samaritan's a day late now, right? He found him, took him, it's taken a day. It's the next day now, he's heading on his thing. So wherever he was headed, whatever he had going on, whatever business dealings were going on, his family, whatever it is, he's a day later now than what he was when he started his journey. What if another mile down the road, there's another guy on the side of the road. There's another guy beaten up, left for dead on the side of the road. Does the Samaritan stop? Does he help? Maybe. I think hopefully, probably. I want to say hopefully, probably. Does the same thing. Now he's 2 days late. And if he had any more money, he doesn't have it now. Now it's all on credit. And he leaves. And he goes 3 miles down the road, and there's another guy. What does he do now? Can you imagine this scenario playing its way out? Does the Samaritan decide at some point, I just need to close my eyes as I ride so that I won't see another person? So I want to tell you guys a story. And I'll tell you a little bit about the magic community. So if you create a move, a sleight, we call them, that allows you to accomplish something, a move that allows me to take a playing card that's in the middle and move it to the top without anyone knowing that I've done that. Okay? So if I create that, the only way for me to be able to say this was a name, the move, is to publish it. To put it in a magic periodical, to put it out in lecture notes that I might put out. That's the only way that happens. And so something happened to me, it's been about 20 years ago now. I created a move. It was original, no one else had ever come up with it before, and so I was getting ready to put it out to the magic community because I thought it was valuable. People could use it. Well, another magician who's about 40 years older than me found out, and he said, nope, can't do that. I came up with that 30 years ago before you were born, and I just haven't shared it with anybody. So I went onto a website for magicians, and I took the names out. Because this magician who said this was a name. He had a name within the magic community. And I just took the names out. And I said, okay, here's the situation. With no names, with no understanding of anybody, gave them the situation. Move came up with independently, want to publish. This other magician found out about it, says, no, that's mine. I came up with it before you were born, so you can't claim credit. And I just kept it to myself. To a person, everybody said, no. If he didn't want to publish it, he takes the risk of someone else coming up with it and publishing it. That's just the way things work. Everybody said that until that guy said, it's me. I'm the one who said that. And all of a sudden, because of his name, everyone switched their opinion. They saw this as the underlying principle about how things should work. But the moment someone that they wanted to be on their side because of their name, they closed their eyes to that principle. And now everything changed. Guys, I want to say that this easily could happen to us. That we have these principles that we know and that we would say, yes, that's absolutely true, that's the way things are. And yet, depending on the circumstances, and sometimes the circumstances have to do with us. Imagine the scenario I gave you with the Good Samaritan, that happened to him. He just kept running on the people, and he kept running on another person, and pretty soon he's lost contracts with people, and he's out of money completely, and his donkey's needing fluid taken off his leg, and he finally is like, I know this principle, but I just can't do this anymore. I just can't. And so he closes his eyes so that he doesn't have to deal with it anymore. Or maybe it's, we know this principle, but because of the people involved, and we like this person, or we want to be on their side about things, and so we close our eyes to what we would have said otherwise. So we we have this underlying principle, love God with all that you have, love your neighbor as yourself. And we even have a story that goes along with it. But what happens when the story we see in front of us has different names on it, has different situation on it, even though the underlying principle really still applies? But maybe because this story doesn't have the impact on us that it did in the first century. Maybe because when we hear Good Samaritan, we don't hear the jihadist drug dealer came to me. We don't hear that horrible, horrible, unclean person. Because when we think Good Samaritan, because of the way it's been told, that doesn't have that dynamic in our minds. And so we don't realize how radical this story is. And so when we have other names that come in, and we say, well, there's this person over here, he's invited me to his house to sit and eat with him. Oh, but Terry, he's... And all the labels come out. Terry, he did this, he's done this, he is this. You can't go eat with him. Oh, but Terry, this person did this and this and this and this. You can't be with them, you can't help them, because that would somehow make people think that you're okay with that lifestyle. You've got to keep your distance from that. We allow the circumstances to close our eyes to the underlying principle. And so Paulette said something last week, and guys, I actually do listen to what she said, and I think about it. And she was talking last week about the idea that if she was in this situation, that there's fear involved. Mm-hmm. That for her, if she was in this situation, it would be very difficult for her to do the things that she might do if she was younger, or if she, And so I thought about that. I'm like, that's absolutely a thing. It doesn't change the underlying principle, but it will change perhaps how we engage that underlying principle. So what if instead of it being, oh, I've got to stop and do this, what if it's, oh, I'll be right back. And you get on that donkey and ride as fast as you possibly can, and you go get 2 other people to come and help you. Because you know you can't do it on your own. So you're engaging the underlying principle. You're not just walking away because it's like, oh no, I can't do it on my own. It's like, no, I can't do it on my own, but I still need to engage that principle. I still need to love my neighbor as myself. And so because I'm in the situation I am, I'm going to find another avenue that still allows me to love in the way that I'm called to love. I'm going to go get some other people. And instead of me doing it on my own, we're going to do it by committee. Or what if we say, okay, we need to do something about this road. We need to get some street lamps up on this road. We need to do some preventative things as a community so that this area is not as dangerous. So this isn't happening as much. What if we do it that way? What if that's one of the ways that we do it? Wait a minute, Terry, are you saying that we should use our money to put up things for the community, put up street lamps? Is that a way to love our neighbors? Is that a way for us to help those who would find themselves in situations because that's pretty much the road that they've got to travel? And if that's a way we love people, and that's a way that we bring justice to life for people. We can get creative. We can find ways of doing things when we run up into a situation that is so legitimate. It's so legitimate. But do we let that stop us? Do we say, I'm going to have to be creative? I'll have to come up with another way. Because I'm going to do this somehow. I'm going to live into this principle. All right, I'm going to pause. I got something else I want to throw out, but I want to pause right now for thoughts, questions.
Very similar thing happened to me. There's a curve in the road going toward my house, and I was going toward the house, but this young lady, I saw her, I think she was on her cell phone, I don't know. She didn't notice the curve. She went, and she was dangling a bit road and toward the creek.
Mm-hmm.
What do? Not a doctor. I call 911. But it was busy. I kept calling and kept calling. Somebody else drove up who worked in that area, and she knew somebody to call, have the police out. But it was, she's okay. We had some stitches and whatever. It was kind of, I did what I could do. And if I had tried to get in the car, it didn't make it. It would have went like way Grand Canyon, but it would have tipped over probably into the creek. So his little thing is calling 911. Anybody else?
It's amazing how deep in different directions we can go from one story. Guys, I don't find it necessarily as my job in here to tell you exactly what you should do about things. My job in here is to try to open your thinking to other ways of seeing things, other ways of understanding things, and hopefully that new understanding driving you to do things differently. So sometimes I can be a little vague about what it may mean for you, because it may mean something very different for you than what it means for me as far as how you live this out. But for us to struggle with, to wrestle with the context that we're in, the time we're in, the country we're in, the state we're in, the community we're in, the church we're in, the clothes we're in. And that context may have taught us to think in ways that are not kingdom ways of thinking. And that we're dealing with issues, we're dealing with people that would want to say, you need to think this way. I asked a question online recently. I asked, who are we allowing to disciple us? Because trust me, there are tons of people that would like to disciple you into thinking the way they want you to think. All right, I'm going to toss out something very controversial. Not that I never do that. Can I ask you a question? Underlying principle here. This kind of goes along with my magician story. Underlying principle. Is it wrong? Is it evil for a powerful group to forcibly starve a weaker group of innocent men, women, and children for months? Do you think that's wrong?
Yeah.
Regardless of what the reason is. Would you say that's wrong? Yeah. I hope so. I was putting this question out hoping there would be an overwhelming, of course, Terry, what are you talking about? Of course it's wrong to starve people for a month. I agree. I think it's wrong. I don't care what the reason is. Starving people, especially innocent people, men, women, and children, is wrong. It doesn't matter what the situation is. Guys, I know that there are big sides on this. I don't care the sides. I'm not on the side. That's what Israel has been doing to the people in Gaza for the past 3 months. No food, no fuel, no medicine for 3 months. But because people are invested on a side, I'm not hearing church people speak up about it. I'm not hearing Christians speak up about it. Because they think that if they say, but that's my side, that's the people I support, I can't say anything bad, I can't hold them to account because that's my side. Or, well, if I say that, then that must mean that I'm okay with what happened that the other side did. No. Yes.
Okay, so here's my problem with that also, is the fact that my daughter brought that to my attention,
Mm-hmm.
who is having a hard time believing as it is that Christians are Christians. You know, and she brought that to my attention, and she told me a few stories that she has heard and read about and stuff, and well, how do you say anything to that? You know, people are people. We're not perfect people, but that is just inhumane.
If it's true. I mean, I've watched
Right.
where the IDF said they've opened 4 centers in the last week.
In the last week, but not the 3 months prior. But let's just take it as a given. Let's just say this is the facts. If that's true, all right, I'm just on the basis of this is what we are told is happening. If it's true, should we say that's wrong? Should we say, regardless of what Hamas has done, that the innocent people within this area of Gaza should not be forcibly starved for 3 months? That's just wrong. Now, that doesn't say that I'm okay with what Hamas did
Correct.
when they came in and blew people up and took people. No, that's wrong too. You can say both at the same time. One is wrong and this is wrong. But this is the part where I'm talking about, depending on the situation and whose side, who's not on the side, who I support and who I don't support, that we choose to close our eyes and not speak up.
Is it because in the church we've been taught over and over and over from the time we've been little that those are God's people? Mm-hmm. And so because we've been taught that,
Mm-hmm.
we shut everything else out.
Yep.
It'd be like saying, well, we're Christians, so even if we went out and murdered somebody, we're still Christians, or, you know, it's the same thing.
Why do you think that is? I mean, there's a ton of different directions we could go here. Why do you think that we have almost gotten to this point where, because these people are where they're from, that they automatically must be more in the right than these people over here? Why is it that do you think that we were taught that necessarily? When in one breath we'll say, God is no respecter of persons.
Except for the special group over here.
Except for this group over here.
That's right.
I believe it's because pastors went to seminary. And if you really look at some things...
Now wait, which direction, wait, hold on, which direction do you think are you saying that? Because to me, I'm gonna stand up for education here.
Well, and I'm
but-
not against that,
yeah,
but
I'm
I'm
educated.
saying that,
Yeah.
again, in seminary, over the years, the same thing, and you really look at it, if the enemy wanted to really corrupt a system,
Mhm.
it could be done that way too. It just takes one wrong teaching, and it's passed down from generation to generation to generation.
Mhm.
And that's not what the word says. And so, the same thing happened to me, and I shared that with you.
Yeah.
I left everything because I wanted to get to the point I could hear from God. And I think that's so important. We've listened to pastors. I'm not saying we shouldn't listen to pastors. But what I'm saying is, the Lord started asking me, why do you believe that? And I had to say, because that's what I was taught. And I started asking other family members questions that he questioned me and got the same answer, because that's what I was taught. And so we have to be careful, especially as we go forward.
Mhm.
We've got to be able to hear from the Lord on our own.
I think, well, and this is one of those things where it's a both and, not an either or, right? One of the things that Martin Luther basically started the Reformation, for those of you that don't know that. Martin Luther was very upset because of the way the Catholic Church was doing things at the time, that they were selling tickets out of hell or out of purgatory for money.
Still do.
And Luther's at least famously, he said, if the Holy Father could do that for money, why in the world would he not do it out of love? And so he's very angry, and he nailed his 95 Theses to the door of Wittenberg Chapel, and basically we moved into the Reformation, into the Protestant Reformation. Protestant comes from the word protest. We're a bunch of protesters. And Martin Luther did not want there to be this breakup of the church. What he wanted was the Catholic Church to reform, change the way it's doing things. And he lamented that us having our Bible and what we can read is a wonderful thing, but it's also a dangerous thing. Because when you have people who don't have any education into context, into time period, into differences of language, into differences of idioms, you start interpreting the Bible in ways that it was never meant to be interpreted. That's why in Jewish community they read communally as well. They went to their rabbi and said, Rabbi, I don't understand this. Help me understand it. You have the education. Tell me what these things are. And they would read in community. And they would talk to each other. And Luther was afraid that bad theology would come because people were reading with their glasses on and not necessarily the glasses of Jesus. That they would put on glasses that were actually blinders to certain scriptures because they didn't want it to mean what it meant. They wanted to live a different way, which goes back to what I was talking about. Our willingness, depending on the situation, to close our eyes to the underlying principle because of whatever the situation is. I have a side, I don't like it, but I don't want to call out my side. My side shouldn't do that, but I don't want to say anything because it's my side. But I should, but I don't want to. Yes?
I watch Charlie Kirk on TV at 5:30 he comes on.
Mm-hmm.
Then Alan Jackson, the minister from Murfreesboro, comes on. And then Stuckerberg comes on, ex-Stuckerberg. And Charlie Kirk says, and I saw it on TV, that, well, I'm not sure it was Stuckerberg, maybe I've seen it on TV, that they have gotten the aid there to Gaza, but the Hamas has stolen it, and they broke into the warehouse the other day where they had stored people from Gaza, and took the aid that was stored there for nobody except Hamas, and broke in there and got it. And I don't know how long that went on, going 3 days or X double days or whatever, but getting aid, but that IDF can't send out cards where they have a shipment of aid to Gaza. They get the soldiers.
So, again, I'm not arguing necessarily, I'm saying if this is the case, are we willing to say that's wrong? Regardless, are we willing to stand up and say, I don't care who's doing this, it's wrong. That's not the way we should deal with this. That's definitely not the way Jesus would say for us to deal with the situation. Are we willing to do that, or are we going to close our eyes and say, but it's my side? And guys, this goes in so many other different directions. We have a particular side that we're on, no matter what it is. I'm not going to mention anything in particular. But we're on a side, and when that side does something that we know, if we actually have our eyes open, isn't right, isn't a way of leading people to think about other people. All right, I got one and then two.
I have two questions, one you can answer later, but, so that would be, do you believe in the concept of the greater good? Right, so that's the later one, but the immediate one is, I think you can have 2 points of view. For example, like, one of the commands is do not kill, right? So killing somebody is wrong, right? But if someone breaks into your house and you have a gun, and you have a butcher knife, and they're about to chop you, you're gonna kill that person. I know I will, right? So that can be wrong, right?
Yeah.
But
The
it's
word-
almost like the greater
The
good.
word in the scripture is actually murder.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I understand that, and I realize that we, to the best of our ability, we try to live the way God has called us to live. To the best of our ability, we try to do that. If, going back to the story, if Paulette was a big, strong, 23-year-old who'd been, pumping iron like she used to, she would probably do differently in the situation than what she would now. But to the best of her ability. So now she has to be creative. It has to be different, right? But my question is when someone leads me, wow, okay, I've only got 3 minutes. I'm going to say this and leave. If I have someone who I admire, who is on my side, who is leading me to demonize people,
Start that over.
if I have someone who I admire, who I look up to, who I'm on that person's side, in whatever sides there are, and they are leading me through their words, they are to demonize a particular group of people. And the words are not really specific, they're more general. This group of people are horrible people. This group of people, we have to be afraid of these people. For me, I feel like I have to stand up and say, no, that's wrong. If you want to talk about particular instances of where certain people did certain things, but I'm not going to stand here and not say anything just because you're the person that I've looked up to, or still maybe even look up to. But this thing you did here was wrong. And I need to hold you accountable, maybe even greater than I would the person that I'm not on their side. Because you are on my side. You're the guy or the girl or whoever that I have been advocating for you, and now you're doing something that I think is not leading us or not directing me to do things in the way Jesus wants to. I feel like I have more responsibility to say, hey, let's not do that. These other things are great, not that. I feel like as the church, in fact, it's not my feeling, throughout the ages, one of the things that the church was supposed to do as a body is to hold people accountable who are in power and how they treat those who are not, and how they talk about people who are not. The church is the one that holds the powerful in check. Let me read a few verses here real quickly. Isaiah says, woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees, who deprive the poor of their rights and without justice from the oppressed. making widows their prey and rotting the orphans. Jeremiah says, God proclaims, do what is just and right. Rescue the oppressed from the power of the oppressor. Don't exploit or mistreat the refugee, the orphan, or the widow. Deuteronomy, at the end of every 7 years, you must cancel debts. This is how it's to be done. Every creditor shall cancel any loan that's been made to a fellow Israelite. They shall not require payment from anyone among their own people, because the Lord's time for canceling debts shall be proclaimed. That's talking about the year of Jubilee, when every slave was supposed to go free, and every debt was supposed to be canceled. And guess what? The Israelites never followed that law. Not once.
Well, when they came back from the captivity, they did, and then they changed their mind.
Right, but as far as it actually happening and staying happen, and it's supposed to happen every
7 years, right. That's why they went into captivity.
Never did it.
70 years.
Yeah. In Leviticus, God goes into great deal about the year of Jubilee, which I just talked about. So, are we standing up for the people that we say that we're supposed to be standing up for? The oppressed, the poor, the orphan, the widow, the refugee. Are we willing to, we know, general, underlying principle of how we're supposed to be. But the way we love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and understanding is by loving our neighbor, whether they're poor, whether they're oppressed, but especially if they are. Because that's where we find Jesus almost all the time. Jesus is not standing with the wealthy. If you want to know what side Jesus is on consistently, it's on the side of the poor and the oppressed and the marginalized, the stranger. All the things that Jesus gives us as the things that really make the difference are, I was what? Sick. I was naked. I was in prison. All of those things are talking about people who are poor in some way, who are oppressed in some way, who are marginalized in some way. Now, could it be through their own doing? Absolutely, but that doesn't change the way we respond. It doesn't change the way we think about them. It's not supposed to change the way we see them. We cannot allow dehumanizing language by people who want to disciple us to actually disciple us. We've got to hold on and see things through the lens of Jesus and understand what kingdom thinking and living looks like. And may we have to get creative? Yes, we may. But we can't close our eyes. So, I'll end there, because we're late, as usual. Guys, I love you. Thankful that you let me come in and speak my heart. I know you don't always agree with me, and that's okay. I don't require that. If I required that, I'd have to leave too, because I don't always agree with myself. But I love you fiercely, and I appreciate each and every one of you. And if you haven't got a hug from me recently and you want one, just come up and tell me. Because I like that. As Ron found out this morning. It felt a little uncomfortable, I think. God, thank you so much that you sent your Son. It's only through Jesus that we truly can know you. It's only through his example. It's only through his Spirit that continues to breathe into the Word. The Word itself is not the thing. The written Word is not the thing that saves us. The written Word is there to help guide us to see you, to see Jesus. That's its purpose. And that happens as you continue to breathe into those words and into us to help us understand. It's all about Jesus. It's all about his view of things. It's all about him leading us to open our eyes to see things through him. And in that, it changes everything. It turns a world that is upside down, right side up, at least in our view and our understanding. And our world desperately needs to be turned right side up. Father, help us to strive justice, to set things right for every single person, regardless of what side they may be on or that we may be on. Because that is your call. The justice of the kingdom. That's what we pray for every Sunday. Help us to open our eyes to be about that in a way that looks like Jesus. And we ask it understanding who you are because of Jesus. Amen.